back, which I think is very duplicitous. But with that said, I want to come back to our guest who is here with us now, and that is Shannon Wright of the Right Way. Shannon, can you hear me all right there?
I can. I can. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. And you're coming through absolutely perfectly on our end. Now, I've mentioned it before for people who are watching this and listening in. We wanted to talk about where is it? There. Oh, I just had your image. I'm sorry. I'm trying to play with my system on the photos. But you've got a morning show program with SHR Media, and where you and your husband, Mike, are doing a morning show. Is that right?
It absolutely is. We start folks off in the morning from 7 to 9 a.m. and try to provide a little news and information as well as a little spiritual grounding and entertainment to get folks off on a good foot.
No, and that's a fantastic thing to do. And that's always tough to be the first people up in the morning. I can imagine that can be a little difficult. A lot of coffee there, huh? Do you guys drink a lot of coffee during the show?
Well, for me, the day has to start with coffee. It absolutely.
That's what I would imagine, because it's like that for me as well. But that's not the only thing that we wanted to talk about, because I know the show is really great and you've been doing it for a long time. And for people who don't know, as I mentioned, we've met before over at CPAC in 2019, and we were covering that all 4 days. And,
yes.
And God help me, I mean, I was getting up at 5 in the morning to be there on time. What time were you guys getting up to get there?
Well, for us, it usually takes about an hour to really get set and situated, see what may have transpired in the news overnight that we may have missed, and, just kind of do a last-minute briefing and order the stories that we're going to cover. And then we're live at 7:01.
Wow, that's an early start to the day. It definitely
is.
But I know that's not the only thing that you wind up doing, because you're also involved in politics. You're part of the Maryland political machine. Am I correct?
I am. I am the former vice chair of the Maryland State Republican Party. I am the current and first female chair of the Baltimore City Republican Central Committee and the Maryland chair of the Black Republican Council.
Wow. That is a huge series of things. I mean, that's got to keep you busy all day long, I would imagine.
It does. And for your listeners, anyone that knows anything about Baltimore right now, it keeps me on my toes a little bit more than usual.
Well, yeah. Considering what's going on in Baltimore right now, I mean, there are and it's not like Baltimore doesn't have its own share of scandals, but you guys have a lot. I mean, there's the drugs, the scandal about the books. Mayor Pugh is expected to be resigning at any moment. Is that right?
It's been, today I think is day 32 of her absence.
Just gone.
It's been an interesting time. Our state constitution obviously outlines how, the state functions, and our city charter outlines how the city functions. So the president of the city council has stepped up to be the acting mayor. So there is a person in City Hall in that office, but that person, there have been questions coming out about recently to see how involved he's been in some of the things that have happened with the mayor. So we are very much a city in turmoil and flux at the moment.
Well, that's a big problem, considering
it is.
I was just looking at research before I got here to do the show, and I saw that Baltimore, there's been 87 homicides with firearms, and in total, just all around, there's been 93 in the city since the beginning of this year. And considering the problems we see with the mayor and the lack of a mayor, I would only think that would have to contribute to that. Go ahead.
I would like to say that it has contributed to it, but in all honesty, Maryland, Baltimore specifically, has had a problem with its homicide rate for some years. Specifically, I would say in the last 4 years or so, um, it's been in. The numbers have been growing exponentially, honestly. We've had a rather large turnover in leadership of our police department. When we get officers in, there's a big problem of retention. There's a problem of corruption. And the homicide rate has been off the chart for some time. We, per person, or how they calculate those rates per your population, unfortunately, we're in the top 5 in the country for the worst homicide rates. And that's unacceptable. There's people require, whether they agree to it or not, people require strength and stability in their leadership to feel that the ethics and the mores that we're raised with, whether directly or indirectly, that we can actually live by those because we're in a place where we're safe. We're in a place where there are certain expectations of safety and security to be able to function like a city should. And in Baltimore right now, that's not there.
No, no, it definitely isn't. And there is a long-term trend. You're right. You're right there with Chicago in many of these
Yes.
numbers. 24% poverty. I mean, 4,000 people who are homeless as of 2011. So all of this has been coming together, and obviously leadership is needed for Baltimore. And I was speaking with you. I saw recently you have an answer for that. Is that right?
I do. I do. After some careful consideration and a lot of conversations with my husband and my family, I've decided to run for mayor of Baltimore.
Now, that's a big deal.
It is.
That's got to be tough. Have you? I know you've run for races before. You've had some experience in running for an election and being elected in the positions that you
Yes.
have now. But mayor is kind of a step up. Have you? What brought you to that decision?
Well, in 2016, I ran for city council president, which is also a citywide office. There are 3 citywide offices in Baltimore: comptroller, city council president, and mayor. Most of the financial decisions are made through the Board of Estimates, and the Board of Estimates is comprised of the city council president, the comptroller, and the mayor, plus 2 designees that the mayor can appoint. Um, there have been issues for quite some time in Baltimore with questions of fiscal responsibility, or more to the point, evidence of fiscal irresponsibility, that have led to some shortfalls in some of the programming needs of the city. And when I ran for city council president in 2016, 2016 was a challenging year. I won my primary, but I did not win the general election. And in winning my primary and going to the general election, I had the highest vote count of any Republican in the city of Baltimore for a citywide race in over 20 years.
Wow.
And I talked to folks around me and I said, okay, we've got to really look at this thing. We've got to really see, not just spew politics, but understand policy and how those policies can benefit the people in this city. And we're going to take some time and we're going to do this again and we're going to get it right. And we're going to get it out there in a way that people in the city can hear it and it can resonate and understand how it will positively impact their lives. Now, we've had these conversations and have been planning for this before all of this chaos happened with our current mayor. So this isn't I woke up in the morning and decided, hey, I'm going to run for mayor. Now, this is something that we've really put some thought and some planning into. I've spoken to our state party chair and executive directors. I've spoken to the members of my central committee, and some other folks outside of my family as well, and including my family, to really make sure that we see all of the things that we really need to take into account to be able to run this race through this cycle in the way that best benefits the city of Baltimore. People need to understand that they have options, that they're not locked into one frame of mind, one school of thought, and that doing that for so many years is what has greatly attributed to the downturn and the downslide of the city of Baltimore, and we want to fix that.
No, I understand that completely. That is something else. I mean, I was looking over some of the unemployment rate numbers, and consistently we've seen since 1990 that Baltimore has underperformed versus the rest of the nation. And I know for a fact that, I mean, when I was doing the research, we haven't seen a Republican as mayor of Baltimore since 1967. And we see the result of that. I mean, look at where the status of the city is. Kind of like Chicago, kind of like look in New York State, where we see a predominance and a historic trend of just one party rule, which winds up destroying many of the areas. So that change is important. And the fact that you got so many votes, the most in 20 years, really says something there. So let me ask you, how do you think, if you become mayor of Baltimore, how would you address, say, as an example, I know we don't have a lot of time, but poverty? How would you look towards that?
Well, I think we've got to do two things to address poverty. No, let me tweak that a little bit. We need to do two things to address poverty in a sustainable way, to reduce poverty and be able to sustain that reduction. We have to do something, and a series of somethings actually, that make Baltimore a viable economic option for businesses to locate to. Now, in order to want to do that, folks have to know that it's safe. So we have to do something to really get our crime numbers down. And then we have to do something that creates a climate of economic growth. We want to be that city that attracts technology innovation. We want to be that city that has multiple incubators around the city, where it's become that oasis of new thought and paradigms of thought that can actually turn around a lot of our urban areas and help them to become the growth centers that they once were. Baltimore has a lot of issues and problems, but Baltimore is not the only city with a lot of issues and problems. And if we can take a stand here and say no more right here in Baltimore and turn some things around so that this city has the chance to be what it once was, I believe that this can be that clarion call that gives hope to other cities across the country.
I think it can definitely be that. If Baltimore turns itself around, a lot of cities will take notice, because it shows that there is a better way forward than what we're seeing in Chicago and what's been done so far.
Absolutely.
I know we don't have, actually, we're just about out of time, huh? I know with the election, also with your show and all the other things that you're doing, I know we didn't have a lot of time today. It goes by so fast, doesn't it? It always goes by so fast. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, time is an interesting thing. The city of Baltimore doesn't have much time. There's a critical mass point where once you hit it, it's very hard to turn the city around. So that is one of the reasons why we are determined that this is the cycle that we begin to make a political change in Baltimore City, so that we can make the policy changes necessary for Baltimore City, and more importantly, not just the city, but for the residents that make up this city.
Well, I think that's an excellent and important way to look forward. And I want to get you back on the show when we can get, I would love to have a good half hour with you and just go through some of the policy issues that you're looking to address.
I would love to do that.
Okay, then we're definitely going to have you back during this cycle. Do you know, while I've been on, do you know if Mayor Pugh has already resigned yet?
Oh, excuse me. There is a press conference scheduled for this afternoon. I don't think that has transpired yet, but it will be.
Okay.
It will be happening this afternoon, and there's speculation. There have been at least 3 in the last week or so where her lawyer has said, I'm going to have a statement, I'm going to have a statement, and, people seem to think that it's that statement. We may get that today, and it is my thought process that it will be a resignation statement. I don't know of many jobs that you can have where you can be gone without communication for 32 days and still expect to, 1, be able to walk back in, and 2, to have the faith and the belief of those that you work with and work for, that you're still able to do the job.
No, I agree with you. I can't think of any job other than in politics where even that can even be a conversation. But
That's true.
Well, we're going to look at that for today, and we're definitely going to follow this up, and we definitely want to have you back on the show as soon as possible. But I'll let you go now, and for everyone who's staying, please stay on the show. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with the end of the show.
Thank you again for having me.
Always, absolutely.
If I could, one last thing.
Yes.
For your listeners, if you're inclined to want to hear more of what's going on in Baltimore or to be of assistance in this campaign, please reach out to me at writeformaryland.com. That's the name of the website. And we want to do this without big corporate support. We want to do this one person at a time. So we're asking folks to make a pledge and a commitment of $20 a month for this campaign cycle. And if you'd be so kind to go to writeformaryland.com and click on those buttons there, your support would be greatly appreciated.
Writeformaryland.com. Absolutely. And I will make sure that we get a link to that on the site, on the program, and in the links of the podcast, so everyone will be able to see that as well. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.